Hey, Veteran, Greg here. What are trains? And so, we begin. This month's work was largely focused on a single subject: trains. Or more precisely, this train. What is it? Why is it there? What is this seemingly infinite white dimension?
What are frogs?
Magnets, how do they work?
You believe in the power of a curse?
Why is it a train in the first place? And more. As a quick recap for the uninitiated, the game I am making is an action roguelite with a unique spellcasting system. And I used this month to largely take a break from the spellcasting and focused on the aforementioned roguelite aspect of my game. Roguelites, unlike traditional games based on the 1980s smash hit Rogue, largely feature progression that takes place outside of the in-game levels. And Arcounter will be no different. Instead of a stat screen where you spend currency acquired throughout the course of the run, I wanted to have a hub area, not too unlike Spelunky or Enter the Gungeon. I imagined a quiet place where you can talk to NPCs, get quests, and generally slow down the pace. I have initially set my sights on making a hub town, and this is how it looked like. I spent a month or two early in the development on planning it out and got to a stage I was quite happy with. And here in the back, I planned on making a train station, a small place from which you could choose your destination. The scope of this area quickly became overwhelming though. All of those buildings would have to be modelled, and what about the town borders? It was simply way too much. It was somewhat sad that all of this work had to be scrapped, but who knows? Maybe I find some use for it in the future, maybe in a sequel? So I got back to the drawing board. There has to be a mechanism through which you enter your desired level, so I came to the current conclusion quite quickly. What if I cram the whole utility of having a hub area into the means of transportation? And thus, the train was born. Various NPCs will be inhabiting it, some with stories to tell, some with quests to give, and others with boons to bestow. But let us step back for a moment. How do you even find and get onto this thing? Well, you die, of course. As soon as your last hit point is depleted, a screen-wide wipe occurs and you are teleported straight into the Shadow Realm. From the very start, my intention was for all of these transitions to be as seamless as possible. I mainly wanted to avoid designing a loading screen, but that is another story. To create this transition, as soon as you lose your last hit point, a second camera that only renders the layer that the player is on activates. This one, instead of rendering its image to the screen, sends it to a render texture. Then, a particle system attached to the world space canvas starts and covers the screen and planes. The render texture mapped in screen space is then displayed on them. Additionally, each one of the planes has a random black to white color that is used to randomly offset the texture on each individual particle for a simple distortion effect. While the screen is covered with that, the player is teleported to this white void. The skybox is swapped and the ability to cast spells is turned off. Behind you, you will always see a set of 3 items: a bench, a clock stand, and a plant. With the interaction system I implemented, you can sit down on the bench in not 1, but 2 different spots. Oh, how the technology has progressed. The plant with the butterflies is there for purely decorative reasons. And last, but certainly not least, the clock stand will always show your current system time if there is something you wanted to check. Additionally, by interacting with it, you can call in the train, the star of this show. Here it comes. Any minute now. It will be here oh, here it is. The door gently slides open and the stairs pop out. Now you can get on board, look out the window, and it is off. You no doubt notice the switch to the first person. That is something I was debating with myself for a long time, I did not want to create a disconnect between the character the player was controlling throughout the level and the one they were on the train, but I ultimately decided that switching like that was the correct idea. No doubt, the unsuspecting players will not even notice any disconnect. That is just a tool in any game designer's toolbox that players will inherently understand. Just like when controlling a character while looking at them in third person, we can still feel that as far as the world of the game is concerned, we are that character, rather than a puppeteer controlling a marionette. Another thing of note is the train moving forward. You can look out of the window and notice that the set of objects that helped us summon this train move past, and soon thereafter see that we are moving through a tunnel. But this is nothing but an illusion, some clever trickery. It is in fact everything else besides the train that is in motion. It may seem unintuitive, but there are definitely reasons for why I did it in such a way. The first one is physics. You see, the player is moved through the physics system, but there is no friction or momentum in the system. Well, not really. So if the player was standing on, let's say, a platform that started to move, they would mostly retain their absolute position as the platform slides from underneath them. This would obviously cause the player to slide to the back of the train as it departs, hoping that the back wall would catch them. Obviously though, moving platforms exist in games and have existed for generations, so there are ways around it which, as I am sure, will not be important as we're going forward. The second, and much more pressing reason, are floating point calculations. I'm sure someone in the comments can explain it much better than I can, but I will still attempt to give you an overview as to how I understand it. Each float, there is a number with a decimal place like 25.683, has a certain number of bytes it can use. That determines a range of numbers it can represent. Let us, purely for purpose of this example, imagine that in the decimal system, each float can hold 10 digits. So numbers like 123.4567890 are possible. But as we make numbers bigger, the decimal point moves. When we get to the thousands, we still have 6 digits after the decimal place that we can use. That gives us precision of up to 1/millionth of a meter. But when we get into millions, we only have 3 numbers left after the decimal point, and that reduces our options to only 1,000th of a meter, or 1 millimeter of difference. That might not sound like a big deal when planning out a room, 1 millimeter there, 1 millimeter here, but when we are talking about models that have vertices this close to each other, we will inevitably start running into issues. And we get into single billions, each position can only be 1 meter from each other. I hope that illustrates the issue with using very large numbers in digital calculations. But what does it have to do with a moving train, you ask? Was it supposed to be moving this fast? No, not at all. Well, currently there is not much to do on the train. Hopefully in the future it will not be so, and I could see players spending a few minutes on it. That will already move the train a lot, but additionally, this is designed as a place of rest where you can take a break. So if, for example, you decide to do so and prepare some dinner or go for a walk while having the game in the background, I did not want you to return to a mess of vertices phasing in and out of existence, shaking everything violently. I am aware this is an edge case, but hey, better safe than sorry. Once you're on the train for some time, you will be able to approach either the front or the back door of the cart and interact with them, which begins the transition back into the level proper. And then the train starts actually moving. I know. I just spent however much explaining why that would be a bad idea, and now I'm doing it regardless. But this time it is different. The alternative would be moving the whole generated level, and with it, AI, the whole level generation would be offset and all sorts of bad stuff would happen. Also, this is not moving anything ad infinitum. The train goes a specific short distance from the place where it was initially teleported up to the first tile of the level. I wanted to make this transition also as seamless as possible. To attempt to do so, I have split the level generation system. So instead of it all happening on one single frame, every frame the next instruction is executed. While this helps smooth the transition, I was never able to make it entirely seamless, since things like instantiating rooms takes a lot of processing power, and even if I was able to split it into further chunks, building the nav mesh for the enemies to walk on needs to happen all on one single frame, as far as I understand it. And finally come NPC conversations. Something to do while your train is traveling, or not, towards your desired destination. After entering the train, you're able to open the doors to sections containing NPCs. You can choose to sit down and begin your dialogue with them. I have opted for a simple implementation of a monologue with a set of responses, as I do not believe that dialogue will ever become the main feature of the game, and I have no need to reinvent the wheel in every single mechanic. While I have created dialogue trees like these before, there is always one thing proving itself difficult when it comes to managing them, and that is keeping track of the flow of the dialogue tree. After all, each response could lead to a dialogue that is 10 or 20 dialogue options later, not to even mention that multiple different responses could lead to the same dialogue. And for that, I have decided to dive into the wonderful world of extending the Unity editor. And oh boy, that was way harder than I thought. Perhaps I'm doing it somewhat backwards, but this is the editor I came up with. And by God, I am not touching it ever again. I thought this was going to be easy. How hard can creating windows that you can drag around be? Why does it take so many lines of code to change the background color of a window?
What a frog.
And that roughly concludes this devlog. What do you think? Do you think that the train idea is novel, or am I, just like always, complicating it too much? Let me know in the comments down below. And as one last thing, I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the 53, as of the time of recording this, of you who hit that subscribe button. It may not seem like a lot, when I'm putting such a big chunk of my existence out there, any kind words help a tremendous amount. And here is to 100. So, if you have not subscribed yet, consider doing so, leave a thumbs up or a comment, and I will speak to you in another month or so, right after I implement the out of the run progression and the first boss. Till then, take care and stay safe out there.